We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
This is Teka Lark-Fleming, and this is the Blk Grrrl Show for September 11th, Thursday, 7 o'clock, and I'm really glad that we're here. Make sure to tune in and listen to us live at LA Talk Live or Blk Grrrl Show website. We have some great guests up tonight, but before that, I'm going to do the Breaking the Table. And the Breaking the Table is called What About Dre? Janae Rice was beaten in public by Ray Rice. And the top commentary in social media in Los Angeles are, why did she stay? And the white guy got to beat Marlene Pinnock and keep his job, so why can't Rice play ball? The fields of sports and music have a long and glorious history of beating women. And as a society, we accept it for the greater good. The greater good is Wall Street, the NFL, the university, Los Angeles, New York. USC has a major school. It's a new school. There's a new major and a new school, the Jimmy Iovine and Andre Young Academy for Arts and Technology and Business Innovation. For those of you in the ivory towers, it's easy to say, don't watch the NFL. But to me, that's just playing. People like me don't watch the NFL. Throwing that out as a badge of honor, it will not impact my life at all. I don't watch sports. It has no risk in my life. Not watching sports is a great thing in the circle that I travel in. But I have several friends that work, get grants and fellowships and many other resources from USC. Who is Andre Young? Andre Young is Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre was the founder of the rap group, he's one of the members of the rap group NWA, Niggers with Attitude. In 1991, Dr. Dre beat the crap out of music journalist and broadcast TV show host Dee Barnes. She had interviewed Ice Cube, who was also a member of NWA at the time, incorrectly earlier in the year, according to members. Dee Barnes is a tiny woman. Not if she were big, it wouldn't be okay, but I want that to note that she was a small woman. According to the August 8th, 1991 article, Beating Up the Charts in Rolling Stones by Alan Light. Oh, I'm so sorry here. I messed it up. After Dee Barnes interviewed Ice Cube, Dr. Dre found her on the stairs at a record release party in Los Angeles. At that party, Dre picked her up and began slamming her face and the right side of her body repeatedly against a wall near the stairwell, as her bodyguard held off the crowd. So people were trying to help her, other men were trying to help her, but because Dre felt he was a big music star, that he could physically beat her. After Dre tried and failed to throw her down the stairs, he began kicking her in the ribs. Dre then chased her into the women's bathroom, grabbed her from behind by the hair, and proceeded to punch her in the back of the head. After the brutal attack, Dre and his bodyguards ran from the building. He did not and still does not deny or apologize for the attack. His admission and pride of beating Dee is documented in several reputable sources. In Light's Rolling Stone article, members of NWA insist that, as Ren says, she deserved it. The bitch deserved it. Easy agreed. Yep, the bitch had it coming. Coming like a motherfucker, said Ren. In the 1994 book Black Noise, Rap Music and Black Culture in Contemporary America by Trisha Rose, members of NWA defiantly defended Dre's actions, saying, bitch deserved it, she had it coming. It was number 37 on Spin's magazine's 100 Sleaziest Moments in Rock. The incident is common knowledge to everyone who grew up in Los Angeles. Anyone who is older than Generation X, this incident is common knowledge to everyone in the music business. This incident is common knowledge to everyone in Hollywood. According to the website Cracked, for Dre's act of brutality, he got 240 hours of community service. He went on to release The Chronic, which sold 4.5 million copies, and to collaborate with Eminem. On a duet between them on Guilty Conscience in 1999, Eminem and Dre joked about Dre beating up Dee Barnes. And let's fast forward 20 years. It's announced in May 15, 2013 by USC President C.L. Max Nikias that record producer Jimmy Iovine and rapper Dr. Dre, a.k.a. Andre Young, will be giving the school $70 million to create a new undergraduate program called the USC Jimmy Iovine and Andre Young Academy for Arts, Technology, and Business Innovation. So when you have a PhD, a TV show, and a book, it's easy to make fun of the NAACP, which I do all the time. It's easy to be outraged at the NFL and say how they knew. But you have to know, these men are mimicking what the men with real power in this country do. They're mimicking people who own the book publishing companies, our cultural institutions, and our press. These men do not have respect for black women, not just black men, but white men do not have respect for black women, and lots of people are forgetting to bring that point up. Do you think if Dr. Dre beat the crap out of a white woman, those white men at USC would take that black man's money and name a school after him? The NFL doesn't give a damn about black women. The USC doesn't give a damn about black women. America doesn't give a damn about black women. When you forget to point at the ivory towers and the ivory institutions because you're scared, because people know what USC does, people know what Wall Street does, people know what these rich white men do, but they like to forget because they get money from them, they get status from them, they get published from them, and they get TV gigs from them. You forget that this is all a scrimmage game. Where is the real game? Who owns Team USA? I'm not going to forget about Dre, but I'm also not going to forget about the president of USC, Nikias, or the CEO of NFL, Roger Goodell, either. That was Breaking the Table, and this is Teka Lark on the Blk Grrrl Show. So thank you so much. Up next, we're going to have an interview with Sharon and Dick of LA Progressive. So hello. How are you guys doing? Hello. Oh, and before I bring that up, I also want to talk about at 5 p.m. on Friday, Marlene Pinnock. There's going to be a fundraiser and a press conference at the Foundation Center at 11633 Southwestern at 5 o'clock this Friday, and it's going to be for Marlene Pinnock. So I just wanted to bring that up since I brought her up in my commentary. So, how are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Can you hear us? Okay.
Yeah. So, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about 9/11 and not the Fourth Amendment, and Homeland Security and all the things that were happening in regards to for our safety. So, let's talk a little bit about. Well, before we do, let's talk about a little bit about LA Progressive. Sharon.
Okay. So my name is Sharon Kyle, and
Okay.
I am the publisher of LA Progressive. My husband, who is sitting right here beside me, is Dick Price, and he is the editor of the LA Progressive. And for those of you who are unaware, have never heard of the LA Progressive, it is an online social justice magazine. Mm-hmm. We publish daily, typically 5 articles a day, sometimes 6, and we've been doing that for more than 6 years. In addition to publishing online, we also have a newsletter that gets distributed to people's email accounts, and of course, we're on all of the social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, we got started as Democratic Party activists in our part of town, northeast Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. We'd been putting out their newsletter, their print newsletter, and their online newsletter, but we kind of wanted to break out of that mold. Mm-hmm. And what really thrust us into action, there was an election, an off-cycle election where 7% of the people turned out to vote. Mm-hmm. And we thought at 7% turnout, there wasn't really democracy in our area. So what we wanted to do was start a website and a newsletter and so forth that would get people more interested in electoral politics. So initially we thought we were going to serve Highland Park, Mount Washington, Pasadena, and that part of town. And that thought lasted about 45 minutes mm-hmm. because the internet doesn't actually work that way. So over time we have a very heavy concentration of an audience in Southern California and Los Angeles, but we have writers and readers from around the country.
Okay. Well, that's, that kind of goes great, really great into our next question about democracy and your rights. Today is 9/11, and, most people know about what happened during 9/11, but there was an incident in 1973 Pinochet, 60,000 people in Chile also died today. But what is the connection between, this Homeland Security and 9/11? Like, how did that kind of come about in regards to helping the community or helping public?
Well, I can start a little bit. When I was a kid going to college in New York City, I drove a cab, and so I drove around where the World Trade Center was. So when we saw those towers fall, I had a spiritual connection to it, and I was deeply outraged, and I approved of our initial response, which was to send 1,000 special forces into Afghanistan and try to hunt down Osama bin Laden. And if we would have done that, I'd be cheering them on even now. I'd probably have my George W. Bush sticker still on my car.
Don't joke that way, please. Please.
But then I will say that I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I was deeply dismayed by our response and our misdirected response in invading Iraq. And it was done, really, a part of the motivation was they wanted to build up this security state. And that, very, very quickly they built the Homeland Security Department as if we needed another department. And that's really what propelled Sharon and I into political activity. Again, I'd been very political as a young person, but not so much right before that event. Yeah.
Well, I have to say that for many years I admired Barbara Lee, a congressional representative from Northern California, the Oakland area. But she was the sole voice that did not want to grant the president the authority to take us to war. And after she did that, it was like she could do no wrong. What has happened since 9/11 has just been a series of what some people call blunders, but from a more cynical perspective, Dick and I often have this conversation, it could be that this was the plan all along, to beef up the budget, the military budget, to place people in a state of fear where they're willing to sacrifice their civil liberties in exchange for this facade of security. We really don't know, have we gotten additional security, but what I do know is that a whole bunch of public monies have been funneled into private hands. And so when we talk about the connection between Homeland Security and 9/11, of course that agency did not exist. Homeland Security did not exist before 9/11. It was created in an effort to make us more secure, but there's been no evidence that has happened. The only evidence is that we have spent a few $1 billion.
So, yeah, on that point, I wanted to say I think a lot of your listeners would know that since 9/11, since the actual September 11th, whatever it was, 14 years ago, we've spent north of $1 trillion pursuing that war. And if we instead had taken that $1 trillion and had like a Manhattan Project for energy, today Germany gets 75% of its energy from alternative sources, wind power, solar power, geothermal power, and the United States, with all our inventiveness, with all our scientific wonder, we get 3%.
Right, and we're still dependent on fossil fuels and still placing our young men in harm's way so that we can protect our interests there in the Middle East.
Well, also too, let's move from the Middle East in regards to Homeland Security to here. The militarization of our police department, and a lot of these little local police departments, they are getting funded. They're getting tanks and all of these, weapons from Homeland Security, because I guess apparently, terrorists are going to attack Ferguson and Inglewood and Compton.
Right. So President Eisenhower, the Republican President Eisenhower, is frequently quoted where he warned us about the military-industrial complex. And what we're really seeing with the militarization of our borders, the militarization of our urban police forces, is the excess manufacture of military-grade weaponry now coming into the hands right home, local, in places like Ferguson.
Yeah, because just like in the war in Iraq, with creating all these military armaments for police forces, there's a lot of money to be made in that. And the thing that worries me, among the things that worries me, is if you dress a police officer up to look like a paratrooper with a helmet and the night goggles and the automatic weapon and the bandoliers, where's their head going to be? They're going to see themselves as soldiers, not as the cop on the block, serving and protecting. They're going to see them just as people on the street do, as an occupying force.
That's right. And so the people who are most negatively affected by the militarization of the police forces are the people who did not make the decisions to send those weapons to the police force. So they become an occupying force. Typically, our people are the ones who are the most negatively impacted, as we see what happened in Ferguson, and has happened across the nation. And by the way, we do not have a centralized database that reports on excessive use of force or deadly use of force by police agencies or other state-funded organizations. There's no place where you can go and find an accurate accounting of how often this is happening in the United States. Yet it is our tax dollars that pays for those guns and pays for all of this that is causing harm to our people.
Yeah, this is just, I think this is ridiculous. And then we have regards to, they're using these Homeland Security funds to do scan your license and to do the drone thing. Now the thing is, the problem is a lot of times when I go to community meetings and things like that, some people seem to think this is a positive thing. Because it's going to keep us safe. Maybe you guys could give a little light on why it's not good, so the police can scan your irises and have drones and spy on you and to look at your license plates and scan out. Obviously, I think it's an obvious reason, but maybe I don't get it.
Well, no, you're right. You shouldn't get it. And in fact, the people that are our so-called founding fathers, they didn't get it either. And that's why we have a Bill of Rights. And we have the Fourth Amendment right that entitles us to the freedom of unreasonable searches and seizures. We have a right to privacy, and there's a reason that we have that right. You cannot put too much power in the hands of the government because it will be abused. It has been proven. If you look at history, time after time, when you give, there's another quote of power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately, something like that, and I can't quote it verbatim. I'm terrible at quotes, but you get the point.
Yeah,
it is up to the American citizenry to keep the government in check, and if we don't, we will pay the price.
And I think that's one of the things that people don't understand, like in regards to, we have a right to not be having a reasonable search. So it's our right as Americans to not have to be spied on. It's not something we just have to accept, because now it seems that because they're so used to having cameras everywhere, they're so used to having everything scanned, people are going, well, this is just what happens. This is what we do. Now they have this program called FAST, Future Attribute Screening Technology, where they can predict crime. They've invested money in predicting crime. So, what are your thoughts on, because they said you can get into the airport quicker with this. That's what this technology is for, to help you at the airport.
Well, I used to travel a lot, and actually anything that would make travel safer and easier, I applaud. And in a perfect world, you'd actually like to have the police, if they would use them properly, to have drones to cut down on crime. But we have a long history of police forces, of people in power misusing that kind of information. Ultimately, would you want somebody like Dick Cheney or J. Edgar Hoover to know your every movement?
They already do.
Well, that's what they do. And the same thing with the NSA recording every phone call in the world. Sure, they can say, well, that this is keeping us safe because we're able to track terrorists and we're able to track drug smugglers. But who knows? We don't. History says that it won't ever stop there. So it's pretty scary, really.
Yeah, it's pretty scary because it's kind of like we have this technology where they're going to be tracking alleged crime that you might commit. So they're just going to pick they can pick whoever they want. Like, well, it says here you made this Facebook post and then you made this post and you made, because our electronic media is really not safe. Like our regular phone is actually more safe than our internet connections. I mean, our internet in regards to our rights. I don't think people get that, because I remember I was talking to some younger people and they were like, "Oh no, the internet's more free than your phone." I'm like, "No, your Facebook account is not more secure. They can violate your rights on Facebook. Facebook is not like the government. It's not like it's a private company."
So Sharon likes sci-fi movies, and we saw a movie that was something like that,
Yeah.
where they had a guy that they had the machinery that could tell who was genetically going to commit a crime. So they would send out these pre-policemen
Preemptively.
who would go assassinate him.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, that sounds insane. It sounds like that would not happen. Yeah, that could happen. I mean, that could totally happen. I mean, you look like a. So what do you guys think the biggest civil rights violations that have come out of this homeland security? We're fixing, we're trying to help you, save you from terrorists, which I think they think we're the terrorists. Personally, but I mean, what do you think are the biggest violations in regard to civil rights because of 9/11?
Well, there's a lot to choose from. I mean, we had the Patriot Act, and we have these Pfizer secret courts. But one of the things that I noticed that I'd never heard before until after 9/11, and in fact, I actually heard it first come out of the mouth of President Obama, and perhaps President Bush had used this statement, but maybe I didn't notice because he was such a despicable president.
Mm-hmm.
But these kill lists,
Mm-hmm.
to hear a president just say, they're just going to kill someone, I just don't remember that coming up. I don't remember seeing a president say, we'll just kill them.
I think we would have a different name for it. It'd be a little bit more clever with the name.
Yeah. But that seems to me like that's a post 9/11 era type of language, that it's now become normalized for the president to talk about kill lists and who we're going to kill. And on that kill list, sometimes are American citizens.
Yeah.
I guess for me, the biggest thing that I can think of is we've created for ourselves this atmosphere that the world is a scary place. Be very, very afraid. They're coming to get us. And that excuses all kinds of excesses. That's why the police are dressed up as like paratroopers driving tanks around. That's why NSA feels that they can eavesdrop on every phone call. We've got people scared. And so the American populace is cowed into supporting one war after another.
And it's they don't even know. They don't think they know their rights. I think that's the problem. And I think that kind of goes to what we're talking about in regards to turning back the tide against this kind of invasion of privacy, violation of our rights. What can we do?
Well, first, I think that you hit the nail on the head when you said that they don't know their rights. Our educational system, perhaps it was intentionally targeted, but I recently read a report that said something like the average American younger than the age of 25 couldn't point out the United States on a global map. That was hard to believe, and maybe that's not true, but it's not that far from the truth. And so the problem with us being singled out for exercising our First Amendment rights, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, freedom of press, the freedom to peaceably assemble, those are rights that we should never be targeted for exercising. That's why we have a constitution. We have a constitution that is supposed to be adhered to by our legislature, by our police departments, but because we have an educational system that has been so targeted for lack of funding and other reasons, people don't know it. So it's our responsibility. It's journalists, it's citizens. Wherever we see that we can make a difference, we have to. Dick started this conversation talking about how we started the LA Progressive because we saw that there was a 7% turnout in our congressional district for a midterm election. And I believe that it is for that reason that we're seeing all of these abuses, because people are so unengaged.
And I mean, how do we get people more engaged? I mean, that's one of the big, how do we get people engaged to participate in politics? Because I mean, that was me when I was growing up. I was very engaged in politics, but the problem was I felt that the moderate left was so out of touch. I simply stopped I was in a different kind of a movement. I was more hanging out with people who were more on a more radical fringe, because I felt that I could not deal with the typical, the typical moderate Democrat. So, but I mean, now I kind of see why it's important for people on the left to be part of the Democrats, because obviously without the real left, the Democrats don't know what they're doing. So how can we get people on the far left to kind of want to be involved and just kind of not just check out completely and start making plans for Canada or some other country?
Yeah.
So if I could say, I'm actually encouraged in the last couple of years. Now, it might be because we have a skewed view because we do the LA Progressive, but we go from one activist group to another activist group of young people, which puts me in mind of my youth, to the anti-war movement in Vietnam. But like one day we'll be with a group of people working on Raise LA to raise the minimum wage for hotel workers, and the next day we'll be at a big enthusiastic meeting about Prop 47 to take the felonies down to misdemeanor status, and there was all kinds of interest around the LA County Sheriff's race and other things going on with the jails. And really, I think that's what's got to have to the Democratic Party. I think those forces that are kind of like the LA Progressive, sort of straddling the line. Certainly we're not Tea Party people, but we're not necessarily in the center of the Democratic Party, but we can push it left. And I think, I'm not saying that I'm convinced that'll happen, but I think it's the only way it'll happen. I don't think starting a third party will work, and I don't think checking out will work.
It's true. I don't think checking out will work either.
Yeah, I don't think checking out will work. But I don't know that starting a third party wouldn't work. There are other countries that have more than two parties, and they do just fine. And with respect to the Democratic Party, I'm kind of like you, Teka. I really wanted much more of a progressive platform than what we got. I was elected to the Progressive Caucus of the Democratic Party, which is a 3-year position, and I stayed with the caucus for a couple of years, and I dropped out because I was so disillusioned. I felt that the Progressive Caucus of the California Democratic Party, their role was, it felt to me like it was just to appease the electorate. So you progressives out there, you want to have your own caucus, here it is. But we had no teeth, we had no power. And one of the reasons, again, that we had no power is very similar to the reason that when I talk about 7% turnout, we don't have enough people. We've got to organize. And one of the things that you need to do to organize is just stay in there, be consistent, get out there and connect with people.
And I think that's one of the most important things, kind of connecting to people and getting things together. But I want to, before we wrap it up, because I'll make sure that you guys are able to talk about things that, because I know you guys have some events coming up.
We do.
And if you want to give us a little rundown on that?
Sure. Well, coming up on September the 26th and the 27th, Dick and I, along with A New Way of Life, so the LA Progressive, A New Way of Life, and an organization called All of Us or None, are putting on a film festival. It's a 2-day film festival that will be hosted by California State University at Long Beach. It's called the Justice on Trial Film Festival, and the focus will be mass incarceration. We have 6 documentaries that will be shown, and we have a couple of keynote speakers, Ruth Gilmore and Daryl Atkinson. And Dick, you want to talk about Proposition 47?
Yeah, I mentioned briefly that we're with a team that's working on Prop 47. Going to meet next week at the Community Coalition, and a whole umbrella group of people who are interested in criminal justice reform are pushing this measure. And what it does, it takes I believe it's 6 nonviolent felonies like shoplifting, drug possession, and like that, and makes them misdemeanors, which only makes sense. So that
definitely
what that will help get away from is these extraordinarily long sentences for people. I mean, there are people. We have a friend who served 16 years for a bad check, which is just ridiculous. So there's all kinds of enthusiasm around for that. So that'll be on the ballot in November.
Okay. Yeah, that's an important, that and along with repealing these ridiculous drug laws that make no sense.
That's
I
right.
still don't understand why, because you can go to jail for 3 years for having a joint, because they could say you were trying to distribute. So there you go.
Yeah, well, when the prison is privatized, then somebody gets to make a lot of money off of that.
Exactly. So these are big problems, and I want to thank you guys so much for coming out. I very, very much appreciate it. You gave us some really, really good information. And make sure to check out your site, LA Progressive. They update every single day.
That's right. Several times
and they
a day.
have a large following. So I very much appreciate you guys coming out.
Thank you so much for having us, and
Okay.
thank you for doing what you do.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Okay.
When I see you, I lose all sensation in my pussy. It's not hungry anymore, it don't wanna eat. And I blame you for making my pussy anorexic. Skin and bone. Where's the beef? Where's the beef? I got skinny pussy. Fat free, skinny pussy. All lean, skinny pussy. Protein, skinny pussy need rice and beans. I can't get it up.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and hosts of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
It started out like a totally normal day.
I love you.
I mean, I guess I was a little sweaty and I was definitely sore. I thought I had gas. Turns out I was having a heart attack. Heart disease is the #1 killer of American women. So now I take care of myself and tell the other women in my life to do the same. Make it your mission to save your life and the lives of the women you love. Find out more from the American Heart Association at goredforwomen.org.
Hey everybody, it's your man Sabir Bay, back on your airwaves, inviting you to join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Sabir Bay Show, discussing history, law, and hip-hop. Every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, the Sabir Bay Show, exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You also can catch us on iTunes Radio and R&B, Live 365, Radio Flag, and now Stitcher Radio. Or watch us and listen directly at LATalkLive.com. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hey y'all, I'm Shaquem Williams, and I'm the host of The Shock Factor here on LA Talk. We broadcast to the world every Friday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Live music, live performances. We're just live. Chef Momo, Erica Ash, and once again, your host, Shaquem Williams. So come join us every Friday here at LA Talk Live, the world-leading broadcasting internet radio station. The Shock.
Hello, it's Teka Lark-Fleming again. This is the Blk Grrrl Show on LA Talk Live. Up next, we have Vega Darling. And hello, Vega. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So we just finished up with Dick and Sharon. Vega has the director of the movie Girl, documentary about the Riot Girl movement, third wave feminist kind of movement. I'm all excited. Like when I found, because when I found your website, I was so excited. I'm like, he's gonna have to get on the show. I was gonna, So, what is a Riot Girl?
Well, I guess a Riot Girl is somebody who self-identifies with the Riot Girl movement, which was a political and musical movement that aimed to bring feminism to punk rock.
Yeah. So it wasn't just like music. It wasn't just a music thing. It was more of a movement, and it kind of like,
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, what were some of your favorite bands in the movement?
Tribe 8, Lucid Nation, Pagan Holiday, Slater Kinney, Heavens to Betsy.
But weren't you weren't you the manager or something for Pagan Holiday?
Yeah, I managed Pagan Holiday when I was a teenager.
Oh, okay. That's where'd they come from?
From Atlanta. They were the first Southern Riot Grrrl band.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people kind of associate the Riot Grrrl movement with the Northeast, and
the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. Sorry, Northwest, exactly. Yeah, Seattle and that kind of area.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was definitely a lot of activity there. That's where the predominant independent record labels were.
Yeah.
So a lot of people moved there to make music if they weren't already living there. But Riot Grrrl was happening everywhere, and it's still happening everywhere. There's like Riot Grrrl chapters in like over 20 countries right now.
And that's, I mean, I think, you know what, the whole thing is I love that. I mean, the whole movement, I mean, I'm still very kind of like into that. I think because the 90s was just a different, I think Generation X 90s was just a different kind of period. It was more DIY because I think our group is smaller. So there's less of us. So they don't have to, we're like the greatest, we call it the silent generation, but we're like the silent generation now between the boomers and Generation Y.
Right.
So even though, whatever. What were some of your, you had a zine too. You also had a zine.
I did a bunch of zines.
Yeah.
I was actually just up at my producer's house recently. They're in the band Lucid Nation.
Okay.
And I've known them for like 20 years.
Okay.
So I had sent them all of my zines over the years, and I haven't seen most of them since the 90s. So we had a little zine party over the weekend, and it was absolutely amazing to see some of the stuff that I had written as a teenager.
Yeah, well, you should have brought some. You should have brought some of your zines.
I left them all at their house.
Okay. So, maybe next time, when you come on, maybe next time you could show us some of these zines and all that, and some of your favorite zines. Oh, a zine, just so people don't know, it's kind of like, maybe you can describe what it is.
It's a handmade, self-published magazine that generally is actually distributed by the person that makes it.
Okay.
So they're usually Xeroxed on black and white. Some people do color. Some people print on newsprint. But very underground publications. Yes,
and it was, it was before like the internet and before blogs. Before blogs, people used to like do little zines and pass them out. And
right, it was the '90s blog.
It was a '90s blog, but it was a lot more trouble. You had to go to Kinko's. Mm-hmm. Kinko's was your friend.
Right, and everybody had a friend that worked at Kinko's that could get them free copies.
Exactly. I was just like, yeah, okay.
Ours was PC Josh.
PC Josh, all right. I mean, it's funny because like now Kinko's is that people don't understand Kinko jokes anymore because people don't really need Kinko's anymore. It's sad. It's that's a '90s joke. So, why do you think more people were DIY or do it yourself? Now it's so corporate. What do you think that they're so? Now, why would you think that generation was so DIY, like the Riot Grrrl?
Well, I think that part of it was that we were coming out of the 80s, which was really hyper-focused on consumerism. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just natural for the leftist people to, just rebel against whatever the biggest thing in their face is. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. But also, we didn't have the internet, so things were a lot more personal. People liked to write letters then.
That is true. It is so. To
and
me,
people book their shows by calling up their friends too on the phone, with a cord.
Isn't that so strange? I don't even know how to make a phone call anymore.
Yeah, everybody booked their tours by looking up, hopefully getting the latest copy of Book Your Own Fucking Life.
Yeah.
And they would just book their tours through word of mouth venues, essentially. And the other facet is that we don't have all ages venues anymore. Mm-hmm. We have a handful throughout the U.S., but in the 90s, all ages venues were the thing. Mm-hmm. And so there was so many underage punk kids that actually got to go to shows because of the all ages venues. But we don't have those anymore, and teenagers are the ones who spend the most money on going to shows. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if they don't have access to the shows, like that whole DIY culture is just going to disintegrate.
Yeah, because now apparently if you let your kid ride their bicycle, you'll go to jail or something. Like I heard this is a new thing. Like you can't ride your bike outside or something, or you play outside. I don't know. They don't let people leave the house now until they're 18.
You have to wear a helmet if you leave the house. You have to sit in a car seat until you're 100 pounds or something, which is like an adult.
I don't understand that. I just when I see these things, I'm just So to get into what do you think the impact on feminism for Riot Grrrl? What do you think? I mean, because I know, like, you know, what do you think the impact was? Do you think there was an impact?
I think there was definitely an impact, but it's kind of hard. You know, everybody's got their own take on it.
Yeah.
So I see a bunch of different facets. I see the most important being that this was the first time that the issues that were pertinent to adolescent girls were actually pushed to the front of feminism.
Mm-hmm.
Before this, adolescent girls, young girls, were completely silenced in the feminist movement and really throughout all of culture. You know, like, it's not just the feminist movement. People don't care what teenagers have to say, period.
Mm-hmm.
So allowing a space where the voices of young women are really, really valued was really crucial for that. And I think that that's been really helpful. The other thing is that, you know, the slogan girl power definitely made it into our, like, collective consciousness. You know, like, we all know what girl power is. That came directly out of the, like, early 90s Bikini Kill fanzine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they wrote a zine that, like, the title was girl power.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes directly from that. And, you know, like, we can thank the Spice Girls for spreading it worldwide. But, you know, I actually saw it being used on a Crystal Light commercial last year.
Really?
Yeah, Crystal Light's apparently girl power.
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. I you know, I'm kind of always torn. Like, was that good that the Spice Girls used that?
I think it's good and bad, you know? Like, it was totally misappropriated, perhaps. But at the same time, like, that's still something that, like, that 10-year-old girl that buys the Spice Girls record in, like, 1998 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, she knows what girl power is, and, like, that's going to change her life, ultimately.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know? So, like, that's cool. I guess.
That's cool. It was okay.
Yeah.
And I think that in a way it was really kind of a necessary thing for, in regards to, I think, feminism to kind of move from that second wave to go that third wave.
Well, there's some other facets to it too.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it also allowed a space for women of color to have a voice, which I know that in the Riot Grrrl narrative that we're told this is not the truth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But in the communities, the Riot Grrrl communities around the U.S. that I've been talking with, you know, there's tons of women of color in these communities. They just maybe weren't in Olympia and D.C. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe, you know, I guess press people don't like to write about women of color because there was all of these bands. Like, I mean, even Tribe 8.
Mm-hmm.
Tribe 8 wasn't a white band. It was like a half-white band.
Yeah.
So, and like in like the LA scene in particular, we had a whole bunch of Chicana punks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's definitely...
That's actually like a lot of the bands that I play. Not now, because this month is a Monty Coppola month, but it's not a Monty Coppola month, you know. Even though the Bags, that's not really that movement, but you know, there are a lot of bands in like on the east side that have the whole Riot Grrrl thing. So,
totally.
So that's, I mean, yeah, because I really didn't feel. I mean, I feel that the movement was inclusive. I know that people have criticized it for not being inclusive, but it's also who writes mainstream media. Mm-hmm. So who are they going to pick? They're going to pick
the pretty white girls.
Exactly.
And that's who they did pick. They picked the prettiest white girls. They
Yeah.
picked Kathleen Hanna to talk about the most, you know, where there was plenty of other people out there that were doing amazing work.
Mm-hmm.
And like Pagan Holiday didn't get a lot of press, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that probably a large part of that was that they performed partially nude often, and they talked about sex worker politics very, very openly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a little problematic for some press folks.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's one of the important parts, because it did kind of bring about, it talked about the you know, the politics, and it kind of like, or just, you know, like sex positive stuff like that, just being more open and more, you know, sex workers. I mean, it did talk about sex a lot, but
Mm-hmm.
because that, you know, coming out of, you know, the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, it kind of needed to be talked about.
Well, we were also experiencing kind of like a queer sexual revolution in the 90s with the AIDS epidemic. People
Mm-hmm.
were into exploring sexuality, especially in the queer communities, in a totally different way than had been explored before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like BDSM became extremely popular within the queer communities, and it really wasn't before the 90s, and it's not as popular now as it was then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know, but like that's what people were doing. People were really finding a way to be individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that was definitely something that was celebrated in the 90s in general. It wasn't just in Riot Grrrl. It was very much celebrated, this whole sense of individuality. And, you know, like now I think we're kind of moving back towards the hive mind kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then let's see here. because I'm like, there's so many things I want to talk to you about in regards to. What are some of? Because now they have the fourth wave of feminism.
Yeah, that's emerging. That's a thing.
That's an emerging thing, which is kind of funny because I remember when like the third wave, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of cool, like third wave feminism. Now we have like the fourth wave. Just to give a small anecdote, I was at this kind of like this anarchist space, and this little fourth wave feminist person, she was, I remember I said something, and this guy said something to me, and she said, stop mansplaining her. Just stop it. And I was like, whoa, I was like, I have like a lot of faith for this new generation of feminists. So I mean, what's kind of like your hope for the fourth wave?
Well, I mean, my hope for the fourth wave is pretty much just what's happening. Like, we see all these cool dialogues that were happening in the 90s about trans women and women of color and real inclusivity of all different types of voices and economic statuses and immigrant women and all this kind of stuff. And now that's become the forefront. So the most marginalized voices are the center of the feminist platform for the fourth wave feminists. And I think that is really powerful. These are the women that, especially trans women of color, there's not a lot of role models. I mean, we have like Laverne Cox and, like Janet Mock. Yeah. Which is amazing that we even have that. But I think just that centering of the most marginalized voices, I think it gives a lot of compassion to just the feminist experience and the different experiences of women and how to really value our women and queer experiences.
Yeah, because I mean, I think that's another question. Like, how can we be more inclusive in the feminist and alternative movements with transgender people? How can we be more inclusive and more open and not forget about people? People always forget, like, oh, I forgot, Well,
it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because to be fully inclusive of trans people, you have to point out the difference in experiences. So that's a little tokenizing sometimes, and that can be a little problematic. I think just being open to the fact that there may be trans people coming to feminist events that, are also looking for community support. I think that just being like, I guess it just being on your radar that trans people exist. And especially, like trans men are absolutely silenced in feminist dialogues, which, to some degree that's okay. But at the same time, we definitely have a place in feminism if feminism affects queer men of all types.
No, it definitely does.
It's an issue of misogyny and patriarchy. Yeah. And we're oppressed just like other people. So I think that feminist spaces being more inclusive of trans men is kind of helpful, because it's definitely on the radar now to be more inclusive of trans women. Yeah. And in the 90s, we had like kind of the opposite problem. Like, trans men were expected to go to women's only events, and that was supposed to be okay somehow. Yes. And trans women weren't allowed to go. And now we have like the opposite problem.
Exactly. I've noticed that. I've noticed that too. I'm just kind of like,
and I have like kind of mixed emotions about it, because like me personally, I'd rather hang out with women like 99% of the time. Yeah. So I feel more at home at some of those, feminist and women's only events that, maybe I'm not supposed to go to those.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it needs to be an open dialogue. People just need to talk about it more and not be, because I think, the thing is too, when you're from the 90s, you're very like, I don't want to be offensive. So you're always kind of like, we're from the whole PC land, so you're always constantly thinking, is this okay? Is this okay? But I mean, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It can go badly if you don't ever talk about things, but, I think it's something that was kind of one of the benefits, is that we kind of do think about other people, like, oh, what if how would I want to be perceived? Well, I know that you're doing a film festival, the Gender Real Film Festival. Can you give me a little information about that?
Gender Real has been around. This will be the 4th year. Yeah. This year we are hosting it in, I think, 6 cities: Long Beach, Minneapolis, Omaha, DC, Philadelphia, and Durham. Okay. And the Long Beach Film Festival will be October 3rd and 4th at the Center and the Cultural Alliance of Long Beach.
Okay. And what's the kind of the focus of it?
It's a trans film festival. So we have shorts, we have documentaries, we have a little animation,
Okay.
a little bit of everything.
And I don't even know if I think I was so asking you so many questions about so many other things. Can you tell me a little bit what's in the movie, Girl? I know you have a lot of like interviews and stuff, but what is, the I guess the point of it?
The point of it is to create a dialogue around the unheard voices of Riot Grrrl. So the Riot Grrrl narrative has gone down as being very specific in the media, and I just don't feel that that's been representative to the whole experience of Riot Grrrl. And also, a large part of that experience is that Riot Grrrl supposedly ended at some point in time, but we still have Riot Grrrl chapters that are active, and Riot Grrrl bands, and people making zines, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's to really get a good idea about what has happened, like what really is Riot Grrrl, like from 91 to now, like what does that really look like? It definitely wasn't just Bikini Kill and Bratmobile. So my goal has really been to focus on the unheard narratives of the story.
And can people who want to kind of, because I mean, this is still an ongoing process. Can people get in touch with you if they were part of that movement and they kind of want to be? Yeah, you
can get in touch with me on Facebook, Vega Darling.
Okay, Vega Darling, get in touch with you, and they can be in your film. And how can we support you in regards to? I mean, how can we support you with money, and how can we support you? I mean, is it like a post office box? We can all 90s.
There's a donation, PayPal donation on my website, which is grrrlmovie.com, GRRRL movie.com.
Okay.
And I'll be doing a crowdfunding campaign in the next few months. Okay. So the other thing that really helps is to just share what's happening with the movie.
Okay.
Through our Facebook and stuff like that.
Because I've been doing that. I've been sharing stuff and letting people know what's going on and all that kind of good stuff. And what are some of like your final thoughts in regards to just the movement, not just the movement, but how can I say, what can feminists and people on the kind of like the fringes, what can we do to be to have more effective change? You know what I mean? I
think that working together and really focusing on our strength in numbers is the way to create change rather than being divisive with one another and being overly critical.
Okay, because that's a big problem. That's kind of huge. We're not going to be able to. Is that something that could actually happen?
I think so.
You think it's so? Okay, that's because that was kind of a huge thing. The whole vegan and the vegetarian and the all of that and food not bombs and different fights and different movements and all that kind of stuff. We all became,
Well, I think that's just the way to go. I saw this happening a lot in LA in the 90s. The Black Panther Party and Food Not Bombs and Riot Grrrl all worked together.
Yeah.
So it's not like it hasn't happened before.
But it has happened before, and I think that's a thing that I have faith that can happen, and at some point maybe do you think that we would ever kind of become more mainstream, like somebody would run for like political office or something like that?
That would be amazing. Well, we are becoming more mainstream. Like, there's been so many feminist punk rockers that have ended up in academia. So, we are educating the next generation, and I think that that's totally infiltrating the system.
Actually, that's true. I didn't really think about that. That is true. They, a lot of people did kind of go to academia, and they kind of went and, they're writing a lot of books. So people are kind of like getting influenced by the thoughts of that movement, even if they weren't necessarily there and weren't really okay. Well, that's good. That's a positive thing. So thank you so much for letting me know, like coming on the show and letting me know about the Grrrl movie.
Thanks for having me.
And this is a great little talk. I felt like going back in time.
I know, right?
Well, thank you. I'm gonna have I have a few announcements to make. Let's see here, because we have some things that are going on in Los Angeles. One moment here. I know I should have had this on a piece of paper, but I don't. So, just want to remind everybody, on Friday, the Marlene Pinnock press release press conference is going to be at the Foundation Center, given by the Black Women's Forum. Maxine Waters is the president. This is at 5 o'clock, so the address is 11633 South Western Avenue, 90047. Also, I will be giving a talk at Docupy, talking about the history of the police. The modern police department was based on the South Carolina Slave Patrol. So on September 21st at the Electric Lodge, I'll be speaking with Jessica Ferris of the ACLU and Dan Factor, a defense attorney. And to remind you to also go to the Justice Film Festival given by LA Progressive. That's actually, I actually put that on the calendar. So looking forward to seeing everybody there, and thank you guys so much. And always tune in to LA Talk Live at 7 p.m. This is Teka Lark-Fleming with the Blk Grrrl Show, and I appreciate you guys tuning in every Thursday. Oh, and next week we should say we're going to have Julian Doe, a journalist and founder of LAB's, a multicultural media portal, and we're going to have Victoria Baca, a politician from the Inland Empire who is currently in a bloody fight to retain her seat against a campaign mounted against her by really horrible people. So we're going to talk about that with Victoria Baca. So it's going to be an exciting show next week. This is Teka Lark-Fleming with the Blk Grrrl Show. And I'll remember to use the Blk Grrrl hashtag. Hashtag BLK GRRRL. Thank you.
They say I'm different 'cause I'm a piece of sugar cane. And when I kick my legs, I got real bomb. My great-grandpa was a blues lover, but he be rocking his moonshine to B.B. King and Jimmy Ray. Rock on that. And that's why they say I'm different. And that's why they say I'm strange. I'm talking about Big Mama Funk. Talk about it, talk about it. Talking about Lightning Hopkins. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Howlin' Wolf. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Albert King. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry. When I was sweet 16. And that's why they say I'm different. And that's why you think I'm strange. I'm talking about T-Bone Walker. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Muddy Waters. Talk about it, talk about it. I'm talking about Lead Belly, Sonny Terry, Brownie Boogie, Sean Austin, Freddie Kane. That's a smear. That's a smear. Oh, hey. Oh, Bo Diddley, have you heard her? That's why they say I'm different. And that's why they say I'm strange. And that's why they say I'm funky. A little Richard, wow, Lucille sang, you sure can sing it. Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson, Robert Johnson, he played the blues for me. And that's why, and that's why, and that's why they sound different. And that's why.
Thank you for tuning into LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network, original reality radio, and crafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk. Stay tuned.